It's 6 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting to order. Our first thing is the adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt. Wait a minute.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add a lead for North Carolina's fellowship program item.
I thought we were doing that down there under,
I'd like to add it to the new business as
yeah,
a
that's
second
fine.
item,
I'm
add
with
to the agenda. It's not on there right now.
Okay, I'm with you. Okay. I've got it written on mine. All right, so we're going to add item B, 1B, and it's called
Lead for North Carolina fellowship program.
Lead for North Carolina's Fellowship Program.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I second with necessary corrections.
Do what now?
I second that motion.
Yeah, I made the motion.
With the necessary corrections that he just added.
You all good?
I made the motion.
Okay, all right. Anybody else got anything? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Old business, there is no old business. Adoption agenda, there was the UDO update, presentation, planning.
Yes, sir. So we have Jennifer here. Out of the retreat, a few council members asked for some specifics on how the UDO would change, so Jennifer's ready to prepare that for your discussion and direction.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At your retreat, it was asked that we bring back specific examples in how the UDO is being recommended to update, and it's based on the state legislature has updated the statewide zoning enabling legislation. This is a mandatory update for all counties, towns, and cities, and Chapter 160D is what it's being referred to as, and it consolidates and clarifies local land use regulation. The deadline for the compliance is July 1 of 2021. And if you recall, we had the consultant, Stewart, with you last week, who went through kind of the recommended proposed changes and how that would impact review processes that we go through currently today for subdivisions, site plans, rezonings, and conditional use permits, which is everything that's handled in the planning department and development regulations. I just wanted to go over with you the project schedule. Yes, we went to you guys last week, February 24th, with an update presentation from the consultant. We anticipate a first draft beginning of March, maybe by the beginning of April, with that final draft being available for public review as early as April, and go before the Planning Commission at their board review April the 26th, with an adoption sometime in May from Council. And again, this will consolidate county and municipal regulations. It will uniform terminology and procedures across jurisdictions, clarify all development review into one of 3 distinct decision types, which we will go over those, and I have an example for each one of those, and restrictions on imposing unlawful conditions. So we'll kind of start with the 3-tier bucket, which is what all the decision types for development review will go into. You have an administrative level, which is an objective decision in the regulation or enforcement of development regulations. And this includes most permits and administrative decisions. Currently, site plans that are under an acre with no modifications, which is what we call them in our department downstairs, is reviewed at administrative level. If it exceeds an acre in size or there's some deviation or modification from our UDO, it comes before council for approval. And that is how we currently do the review process. You had a legislative type, which is a general policy decision to adopt, amend, or repeal a law or ordinance. And again, that is something that comes before City Council for approval with a hearing involved, a public hearing involved, and those are rezonings and ordinance amendments. And then you have the third development review process, which is quasi-judicial. That is a subjective discretionary decision based on evidence presented regarding a specific application of a development regulation. That includes legal style hearings, and decisions are based on expert testimony. And again, that before you is your conditional use permits, which that is a quasi-judicial process and also requires a public hearing. This is just a different way to describe the review process. Some folks are visual versus words, so that's just a kind of a flow chart with the review processes. So now we'll go by case-by-case basis. You have subdivision, which is a by right process with the 160D legislation. Emphasis in 160D is putting more weight on rezonings and ordinance amendments as a point of action or decision by council. Zoning district determines the subdivision standard. So if something is rezoned, say it's zoned to general business, our UDO has those setbacks, front setback, side setback, those sort of things. Those subdivision requirements are set within the UDO, and it's based off the zoning district, which is within inside the UDO. And this is established at the legislative rezoning process. 160D specifies may not condition anything not otherwise legally enabled by the ordinance. So how will this affect us? Currently, there is no subdivision allowed or final plat allowed without a preliminary subdivision plat, which is approved by City Council. That is how you operate today. What the recommendation of the 160D is that those setbacks or those subdivision regulations are set with the zoning district to allow the subdivisions to be approved at staff level. And this is an example. I chose to put Wayne Oil Company. I believe that one's pretty fresh on everyone's mind. If you recall, that is the location off Wayne Memorial Drive where a car wash was being proposed. City Council approved this in December of 2020. At the time, the proposed preliminary subdivision plat was associated with the rezoning request, which limited the use of one lot to an automatic car wash. With the proposed 160D recommendations, the proposed preliminary subdivision plat would no longer need City Council approval as the subdivision standards were set during that rezoning request, and no further legislative review is needed as long as the use is permitted by right. If the applicant would have desired deviations from dimensional standards, that meaning needing a front building setback, say the front building setback was 25 feet and they needed 20 feet, then it would come before City Council for a review. If it meets the standards set for the general business zoning district, then it is being recommended that we approve that at administrative level and not take up the time of City Council for approval. So again, if you are zoned properly, subdividing is a by right process. Are there any questions with this example based on the subdivision standards? The next review or process is a site plan review. And again, administrative standards for by right development. All your site plan development standards are identified, regulations are identified in your Unified Development Ordinance. 160D specifies, and they may not condition anything not otherwise legally enabled by the ordinance. So you have already, as a council, adopted a Unified Development Ordinance, which was done in 2004. Yes, we're updating that, but again, we're only updating to bring in the new legislation of 160D, that terminology, so forth. The use regulations or the supplemental use regulations, development standards are not changing. So parking standards, landscaping, sidewalks, any kind of development standard, the building materials, those sort of things, we are not updating any of that. You have already, or City Council has already adopted that ordinance, and we will make sure that any development complies with those ordinances. If they want to deviate from that, again, it would be a decision that would have to come before City Council. So how this would affect us? Site plan review will be handled by staff according to the standards established by council in the Unified Development Ordinance. And here's an example. I chose to use Eastern Regional Pain Specialist. This was approved by City Council in May of 2020. It's located on the west side of Hospital Road, so it's within that medical park across from Wayne Memorial Hospital. The site development was designed per the development standards within the Unified Development Ordinance. However, due to the area of the site, in this case it was 3 acres, required City Council approval. Current ordinances reads, any site development over an acre in size requires City Council approval. With proposed 160D recommendations, site plan reviews will be handled by staff regardless of the size according to the standards established within the UDO. So I threw this one in here because it was based off size. They did request one modification. And what City Council will have to, y'all need to forget the word modification. With 160D, that becomes a variance. And a variance has to have a quasi-judicial hearing. So anytime that there is a modification from moving forward from adoption of the update, If a developer comes in and they decide they want to modify interconnectivity requirement, for example, sidewalk installation, a landscaping requirement, a parking requirement, it would be required to go through that public hearing process. It is a quasi-judicial. It will no longer be a modification waiver. It is a variance. So staff's recommendation here, for example, if this came back into my office today or in a couple of months, if we can set standards in place for modifications, so if, say, we set standards within the UDO that we could modify at staff level, say up to 20% of a landscaping requirements, parking requirement, or if we were to set reasons that why they could modify interconnectivity, say grading, or it just doesn't make sense between uses, or there's standards on why we would allow you to not install sidewalk. For example, it's not recommended on the bike and ped plan, or it's just not feasible to put it in, and that we set a standard that they pay the fee in lieu. If we have standards set like that, then we could allow more administrative review. If they exceed that 20% or just do not want to pay fee in lieu, or they just flat out have no justification for interconnectivity, again, I'm just giving you examples, it can go back through city council review for approval, but again, it would be with a quasi-judicial process and it would be a public hearing. Therefore, you would have sworn in testimony and they would have to justify why you're granting the variance. So when staff presents to you, it may look a little different versus just approve the site plan with requested modifications. It's going to be a variance that is granted to that site plan. So that is the biggest change with 160D is your site plan review process. But we are trying to make it developer friendly where we're not tying them to a 2-month process by throwing in some stipulations where staff can grant some of these modifications at an administrative level. Staff can do that at administrative level based on the criteria set in the UDO. But if we do not set that kind of criteria, any modification, whether it's one parking space, it's one shrub, lack of putting in sidewalks, everything would go through a quasi-judicial public hearing from moving forward at the adoption of the update. Any questions with site plans before I move forward? The next one is conditional rezoning. Currently, we refer to it as conditional use district rezoning, which is a legislative / quasi-judicial zoning, is no longer allowed. So with 160D, it's being referred to as conditional rezoning, is now exclusively a legislative process, no quasi-judicial review process. Functions like a combined rezoning and an ordinance amendment. Conditional rezoning creates unique zoning standards for a specific tract of land, regulates uses, and establishes dimensional and design standards. So the recommendation for us, and we somewhat do that today, even though we refer to it as a conditional use, we do a conditional rezoning, and we want to tie a conceptual master plan with these rezonings. So what that means is someone would come in and request conditional zoning, and then we wouldn't require them to have a very detailed site plan at the time of submittal. It could be a very conceptual, bubbled type plan, and then if council were to approve that rezoning, they could come back in with their engineered drawings to include grading, drainage, landscaping, site layout, and if it meets the standards that we have established within the ordinance, then staff could administratively approve that site plan versus bringing the site plan back before city council, which is what we do today. If they were to just have kind of a concept plan, we would say site plan needs to be approved separately, and then we would bring it back to you again if it is not submitted at the time of the rezoning. I think you've probably heard me say several times that the applicant has requested a waiver of the site plan. That would no longer exist. We would have that conceptual kind of layout. You would see what it potentially will look like, and if it does not deviate from the code, we could then approve that site plan at administrative level once the rezoning has been approved. And it's just a legislative process.
I have a question, Jen.
Okay?
So now, as it stands, they can repetition, say they get denied, is how many months, 6 months before they can come back?
If
Has
you-
that changed, or is
None
that
of
the
that
same?
will change. If
Okay.
you, currently, if you deny without prejudice, they could come back within that 6 months, but if you just strictly deny, then they, have to wait 6 months before they come back for another request on that property.
Thank you.
The example for conditional rezoning, it's, if you remember Take 5 Automotive, that's the southwest corner of North Berkeley Boulevard and Langston Drive. It was rezoned from office and institutional to general business conditional zoning to limit the use to an automotive service center. With proposed 160D recommendations, the applicant may request conditional rezoning with the submitted conceptual master plan. In this case, they had full-blown site plans, but they could have just shown kind of where they anticipated the building to be, kind of where the parking was going to be, just kind of highlight where buffers would be. It wouldn't have to be a very detailed, dimensional, engineered seal drawing. If City Council approves the rezoning, the applicant can then submit full detailed site plans for administrative staff review, assuming no variances of the development standards established by Council and the UDO are requested. If a variance is requested at the time of site plan submittal, the site plan would require City Council approval as a quasi-judicial hearing process. In this particular case, the site plan required City Council approval because a modification of the front yard setback was requested along Langston Drive from 20 feet to 18 feet. So this example would come back to you as a quasi-judicial for a setback variance with the new proposed changes in 160D. Any questions on this conditional? But conditional rezoning, that's pretty much going to function, rezonings will function as it is today. We just may see, a lot of times we have a rezoning that also requires a conditional use permit, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, but we can still run those concurrently. However, the way the public hearing process will go is the rezoning, because it's a legislative hearing, you'll have to open and close the public hearing for the rezoning, and then you'll have to open and close the public hearing for the conditional use permit. I can present them the same, but the evidence or who speaks is different for each process. And then with your final action, when it comes back to you, after we have a public hearing, then it would come back to you 2 weeks later for approval. We would have 2 actions that have to take place. You have to vote on the rezoning, and then you would have to vote on the conditional use permit, because there's 2 separate review procedures for each one. And the final kind of a bucket is the conditional use permits, which is within the quasi-judicial hearing. These are currently conditional use permits, is what we refer to them in the UDO, and they are no longer allowed. That terminology is just changing. So once this is adopted, your agenda memos, those sort of things, you're going to see it's referred to as a special use permit. We currently have one use that is considered special use permit, which is reviewed by the Board of Adjustment, and that is home occupations. So that special use will be classified in our permitted uses table as a Tier 1 special use permit, and then all other conditional use permits, example, anything with outdoor storage, internet cafes, places of entertainment, all of those in our permitted use table that you currently see a C in that zoning district will now go to an S2 for Tier 2 special use permits. So recommendation is all old CUPs still go to the City Council as a major SUP, and then again that would be S2, and then the remainder would go to Board of Adjustment, which would be an S1. We do. Your Board of Adjustment is your Planning Commission. So when we currently have a variance and/or special use permit, they take action and go in, start the meeting as the Board of Adjustment, and they'll close that and then act as Planning Commission with any other items that follow. You do have the option, and I failed to mention back at the site plan procedure, is if modifications, or that's what we refer to today, any variance, so it could be parking, landscaping, sidewalk, you have the option or the decision to make if you want to keep those at council decision level as a variance, which would be that quasi-judicial process, or you can decide to let all variances go to Board of Adjustment, and it would stop at the Board of Adjustment level. So that is a decision that council would need to make. If you want that to change, that will be how we move forward with the recommended update and verbiage change within the UDO. So if that's something, I personally had the consultant recommend moving forward as council doing those, but knowing that things may go into a quasi-judicial process, it is clearly up to council. Staff doesn't necessarily have a recommendation, but council would need to decide if you wanted to hear those variances at council level from a development standard regulation, or if you wanted to defer all variances to Board of Adjustment. So the example for the conditional use permit, I chose Ace Hardware and Flex Space. This is the east side of Molly Drive between Miles Lane and Southeast Drive. This is off 111. City Council approved the conditional use permit in July of 2020. And according to the city's Unified Development Code, the commercial developments incorporating retail sales of less than 30,000 square feet with outdoor storage requires a conditional use permit. With the proposed 160D recommendations, the only difference is this conditional use permit have been identified as a special use permit and remain as a quasi-judicial process. Any questions on conditional use permits?
I have a question, Jennifer.
Okay.
And I don't know if I'm going to ask it right.
Okay.
But, so the variances, right? You identified a S2, which is those tier 2 things like the internet cafes and all of those things.
Yes, ma'am.
So if the board was to say, just bypass us and allow the Board of Adjustments to make those decisions, do those tier 2 still come to council, or is just going to bypass us altogether?
No, conditional use permits, special use permits would still come to city council.
Okay.
The only thing that would not come to city council if you chose this direction would be if a site plan, for example, wanted to modify parking. 25 spaces are required and they only want to put 20 spaces in. That would now becomes a variance, and you
Okay.
have the option of that variance being granted at the Board of Adjustment level for them to review.
Okay.
Because they are a quasi-judicial process. They currently see variances now for setbacks, for example. If a pool can't be put in the rear yard because of a septic tank has to be put in the side yard. Those types of things go to Board of Adjustment now. Variances that kind of run with the land, so to speak. Development type modifications, what we're typically see with the site plan, have come to city council. But that whole word modification, like I said, is going away. We need to kind of erase that from our minds, and you'll be hearing the terminology of variance, and that would require that quasi-judicial process. Your conditional use permits are going to remain quasi-judicial and will remain city council approval.
Okay.
So, and then at that time, if there is some type of modification, they can somewhat, we can incorporate where we can, but if it's a site plan, just a site plan, that doesn't require is permitted by right, no rezoning, no conditional use permits necessary, that's where you need to make the decision if you want the variance to go before and stay approved by city council or go before Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
So just to summarize, again, the rules for 160D, they're set legislatively by council. That's your ordinance, the UDO. Permitted uses, dimensional standards, design standards, setbacks, landscaping, etc. Your rezonings are traditional and conditional zonings. And then requests to vary the rules are quasi-judicial, and that's within the boundaries established within your ordinance. All other procedures that follow the rules, we would allow at administrative level. So that's your site plans that meet the ordinance in its entirety, and that's your subdivisions. As your subdivisions are set by your zoning district, and we already have those criteria within the ordinance. This is just a visual way of saying what I just, or seeing what I just said. So currently, the only thing that's being recommended to change is we would typically bring you subdivisions. So tonight, you actually have a subdivision. In the future, if the council decides to go to, that would not be before you. It would be something that we could approve at staff level. And then again, that site plan. Right now, anything over an acre comes before you with any modification. And we are recommending that if it meets the code in its entirety, that it be approved at staff level. So kind of the guidance and direction that I'm looking is, are you okay with staff moving forward and working with the consultant to draft a plan, an update for you to review and for the public to review based on these recommendations? Again, I think your biggest decision is understanding that modifications go away, variances are in place, and which review board are you comfortable with reviewing those variances? Your rezonings are going to stay the same. Your conditional use permits or special use permits will stay the same. And then if you are okay with variances, it's us bringing back to you within the draft some recommendations on how staff can approve some modifications without it having to go through that variance process. But we can bring some of those back to you during the draft before releasing to the public for recommendation.
Everybody okay with that?
I'm okay.
Huh?
I'm okay with it.
And keep in mind, it's even going back and trying to come up with some site plans that would just allow for staff at administrative level was kind of hard, because a lot of times the site plans are associated with a conditional use permit, which you already see, or with a conditional zoning, rezoning, which you already see. So I don't want you to feel like you're not going to know what's going on, but I can easily modify my monthly report or weekly report to the manager of anything that comes within the office on an administrative level. I can let him know so that the council is still informed of development that may not come before the board.
That's a great idea.
But you have a UDO in place, and that's the guidelines in which we follow for development regulations. And these changes are strictly trying to be developer-friendly, at the same time protect the council from any future litigation or anything like that.
So you're essentially bringing to us the proposed UDO 160 changes and updates, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you would then ask us to support and adopt those changes?
Yes, sir.
So I would make a motion that we adopt the,
Well, I don't need any adoption right now. I just guess I need your blessing to move forward
Okay.
with the proposed
okay,
direction in which staff and the consultant has recommended, and we will bring back a draft form for you at that time that I will need approval to release to the public for a public comment period.
okay.
So we will have accessibility to whatever you do if we choose.
Yes, ma'am.
And Jennifer, quick, the signage, the visible, the red signs will still be, everything of that nature will still be in place, right?
We're required to post signs, yes, sir. The only additional is if signage that we typically have not posted in the past is a site plan. If we have a variance, those properties will become posted just like we do for rezonings or conditional use permits. So there will be some additional signage that we would have to post for site plans. If the council, and even if the board, even if you choose the Board of Adjustment as the authority to grant variances, we would post those signs as well for a Board of
That's good.
Adjustment case.
Thank you.
But one thing I will need to understand before I leave the room today is, does council still want to be the review board or authority for variances that are development regulations, or do you want all variances to go to Board of Adjustment? That is a key decision that needs to be made on how we can bring the draft back to you. And again, that would just be for site plans, so that would be a parking modification, a landscaping, we have landscaping buffers, street trees, vehicle, surface area landscaping, anything that would not meet the ordinance in its entirety from a development standard regulation requires a variance and would go before either council or Board of Adjustment. They both have to follow the same quasi-judicial process. So it's either council hearing it. Currently, you hear them as a modification on a site plan, but if it's a variance, it is going to require a public hearing.
we're really, conditional use is where we really need to get in it, isn't that right?
That is, and that will come before you
And special use
in
also.
rezonings, that especially, they will all come before you. The only thing that doesn't come before you right now that is considered a special use is a tier 1, which is a home, major home occupation.
Is what?
I'd say
Major
give
home
them the
occupations.
authority.
Do it. That's what I said.
My position was we give the Board of Adjustment authority to handle the variances.
And that is the best legal way. Variances are typically granted by the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, I think so.
And as long as the councils, we still have input to represent our constituents as far as conditional use.
And rezoning, that process is not going to change.
If that, I'm fine with.
The only thing that will change is if we run one of those, if a rezoning, let's use the multifamily example. If someone needs to rezone a residential property to say from R16 to R9 to allow the multifamily, 3 or more units requires a conditional use permit. So we can run those concurrently. It's just I'm going to have to open and close a public hearing for the rezoning, open and close a public hearing for the conditional use, and then your action, your last sheet on those agenda items that we do will look a little different so that we make sure we get the proper motions and seconds and approval process. And most likely, they will probably need to be individual action items versus on consent agenda.
And that's the ones we get in the fight with.
So that'll be where you guys see things that will look different than what we're doing today.
Thank you.
All right, everybody good?
Any other questions?
I
Or
do
then
have
we-
a question that's kind of not related. The
Okay.
site plan that was established in 2004, how often do those things get, or they approved it in 2004, how often do they get updated in?
That being our ordinance itself. They can be updated as often as we like, as things change, as developments, new businesses, like, for example, we didn't have internet cafes when they first started. They were the newest and upcoming thing, and then we did an ordinance amendment. And so you can do them periodically. There's no standard, so to speak, to update every 5 years like you would or 10 years like you would a comprehensive land use plan. It's recommended to up those every 5 to 10 years. But development or UDOs can be done as you see needed. So I'm understanding move forward with recommended changes as presented, and then we'll bring back a draft to you, hopefully beginning of April, so that we can go before planning commission.
It's good with me.
Huh?
It's good with me.
Whenever you put up some signs that says conditional use or rezoning or whatever, could you send out an email to whoever's district that is in?
Absolutely.
Because it is embarrassing when somebody calls you and says, what's going on Kyler Best and New Hope Road?
Okay.
And I say, I don't know.
Right, okay. We can do that, or I know by the first meeting of each month what your public hearing items are gonna be for that next, your next couple of weeks. So I can easily incorporate, I do that for the planning commission. I let them know what their upcoming public hearing items are, so I can do the same thing for city council on your first meeting each month.
That'd be great.
If that seems appropriate, I can do that.
That'd be great.
Mr. Mayor, the attorney is telling us we need a vote on this.
At least a motion to approve.
Okay, recommended changes?
That's right.
Okay,
And so, because everybody's just kind of nodding their head, but I think that for her to go forward with what.
Who's gonna make the motion?
It'd be appropriate to have a motion second with typical procedure.
I'm trying to think.
I'll make the motion that we accept and the verbiage that would you just repeat that, please?
I'll let Jennifer do it as to what she needs a motion to approve for her.
so I'm hearing Councilman Ham has made a motion to allow staff and the consultant move forward with the recommended updates as presented.
Second.
Made that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yeah, well,
Thank
I
you.
think Councilmember Aycock made a second.
Jones.
No,
Councilman
Jones did.
Jones,
Hiawatha did.
Jones, Councilman Ham
You
made
just
the
couldn't
motion.
hear her. She's not quite as loud as I am.
Okay, I got it.
Thank y'all.
I'll speak louder.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
If you could ask Aaron to come in. Just, Aaron, we have an added agenda item. Thank you, Aaron. If you could come up to the podium and back me up here.
Sure.
All right. So thank you for adding this agenda item, the Lead for North Carolina Fellowship Program. I asked the Downtown Development Department and the IT Department to apply for these programs to see if we would be accepted. This past Friday, we found out the Downtown Development Department was accepted for their fellowship program, and the IT program was on a waiting list. We also found out that they would like us to support the program, get approval for it this Friday, 5 March. So that's why we're here tonight, to present this information to you. So the program aims to create the next generation of local government leaders in North Carolina. It places recent college graduates in high-impact positions in local governments across the state to work on transformative community projects. The program is administered by the UNC School of Government in partnership with the North Carolina City and County Managers Association, the League of Municipalities, and the Association of County Commissioners. So if we decide to do this, the cost of it is about $47,000 for one of these people, but there are grants and awards for such that the city would only be responsible for $15,000 to $20,000 worth of this. The particular point we're after here is economic development. The city's been looking for an economic development plan citywide for a long time, and I think with the Department of Commerce, as was briefed during the retreat, and getting this fellow in, along with working with downtown development, we can move forward in that direction along with some other projects that downtown development has going on. So I'd asked Erin to be here to give you a little bit of background on how she applied for this and what she thinks will be willing to do, and then hopefully I can get a motion and a second and approval to move forward with this, and we will include it in the next budget cycle. They start July 15th, I believe.
I think August 1st. June and July, they get job-specific training, and then they also attend a Lead for America training program. So when they get to us, they're specifically trained to help with the tasks that we put before them. So you want me to just?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll take the mic. So just a couple of other benefits that I wanted to outline for you in working with LFNC, Lead for North Carolina. I think that a fellow could assist a municipality like ours by adding capacity, adding a different voice and perspective to our professional staff, and also connecting our city with local governments, other local governments like ours, the School of Government, and other professional associations. So essentially, they're providing added staff to work on city priorities alongside us at a subsidized cost. Fellows, again, will receive that job-specific training. And I think one of the biggest benefits is that they are constantly receiving support from the School of Government throughout their year term with us. So, whatever needs that we have to bring before them, if they haven't had experience with those directly, they can go back to someone from the School of Government and get some guidance and advice on how to deal with them. In your packets, you've got a flyer from Lead for North Carolina, and then you also have an impact report. A couple of highlights that I'll go over with you are that the 16 Cohort 1 participants, so the fellows in the first year of doing this, secured more than $10 million in grants to support the communities and the initiatives that they were working on, and an estimated $1.8 million in cost savings to their host cities. So that's significant. That's only in their first year with 16. So this is a third-year program, and they have successfully implemented the program in 28 communities. So we don't have stats on Cohort 2 yet because that's currently underway. So as Tim said, we did apply to host a fellow on behalf of the city, and we are excited to be chosen. We found out on Friday afternoon, and they do want an answer by this Friday. So not a lot of time, but again, I can't emphasize enough the benefit in getting this, job-ready individual in the city ready to work with us that has that training and that, expertise at their fingertips, if you will. So the two really significant areas of focus that we emphasized in our application were, again, the economic development plan. After I spoke with Kenny, he presented at our Kenny Flowers. He presented at our council retreat last Thursday. I got on the phone with him and asked him again about the economic development plan, and they have actually committed to work with the city to help us develop a plan.
I spoke with them again after we were accepted in this fellowship pool, if you will, and they've specifically committed to work with the fellow in order to help us get an economic development plan off the ground. So I think the keys are that we have that experience. We have the NC Department of Commerce that's providing the resources to put a plan together for us. It would be citywide, and I think our goal is to work towards a custom and comprehensive plan that is unified and specific. We know that the best way to prepare ourselves for grant funding moving forward is to have a plan. We've been told that time and time again. So this is our opportunity to do that in a way that gets us help citywide. The second major task would be assisting us in securing an investor for the development of the 400 block of South Center Street. This is something that our department is already working on, so this fellow would be able to come in and facilitate, get some great real world experience, and then add manpower as well. If time allows, additionally, they can assist with the city's neighborhood plan work. The neighborhood plan was created to address blight in surrounding communities. So again, great real world experience for them and some additional boots on the ground for us. So that said, do y'all have any questions?
Let me plug this program, not this program specifically, but what you're trying to do. For the benefit of 3 of our new council members, we do not have an economic development plan for the city of Goldsboro. We are one of the few cities of our size that does not have one. Selma has an economic development plan, and all the way up to Charlotte. And in April of 2018, I briefed for informational purposes the council on what I felt the need for an economic development plan was. And that was just an informational briefing. I came back in November for a decision to move forward to get an economic development plan, and the council approved the concept that I presented, but there was no funds attached to that. So move forward to 2019 budget process, we were only able to get $75,000 appropriated or funded for the economic development plan. These programs are not cheap, as I said from early on. They cost $200,000 to $250,000, but $75,000 was not going to buy us a decent program. So I just backed off on it. 2020, last year with COVID, I didn't even think about bringing it up. This year, there may be some light at the end of the tunnel. We may have some monies available coming to us. Downtown Development, Scott Satterfield and company there are working angles to get monies. I'm working angles. I don't have anything to put on the table tonight, but I have to tell you, friends, this is absolutely a vital thing that this city needs. And if you haven't gone on the web and looked at cities that are either our size, smaller, or larger, you'll see that they really use this very effectively. And I really encourage us to support this program here because it can lead to further funding. And at this point, it's a pretty good deal. But it's vital for this city to have an economic development plan. I'm not talking about a downtown development plan. I'm talking about a city development plan.
Anybody else got anything?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like I remember Mr. Flower saying that he was going to commit to helping us develop an economic development plan.
Mm-hmm.
So and personally, I haven't had enough time now that we've been approved to even say yay or nay at this point, so forgive me on that, but I just want to be clear that whether we decide to host a fellow, he did say that he would help us develop our economic development plan, correct?
He did, yes. The fellowship aspect of it allows us to have one dedicated person working on this project. you know, a lot of times our department, planning department, other departments are stretched when it comes to staff and bandwidth and time available to work on projects. So working with the fellow would allow us to have that dedicated access, and of course that access to the School of Government, which again, I think is crucial to this program.
So one more question, Erin.
Do what? I'm sorry.
One more question.
Okay.
With the, and some of my sheet is cut off, so bear with me.
Okay.
The cost breakdown for the compensation to a fellow. Is the city responsible for that compensation?
The city is responsible for a portion of it. So the total compensation that they are anticipating for each fellow is $46,700. They have already guaranteed us a minimum subaward of $20,000, and they are working on other subsidies to bring that subaward up even higher. One area that they're working on is securing a partnership with Americorps. With Americorps, unfortunately, they won't know until June if they have that additional funding, but if and when they do, which they are anticipating that they will, our subaward will go down. So we know that their max, or their minimum amount that they're putting towards it is $20,000, which would put our maximum contribution at $26,000, and I think it'll be closer to $20,000 with their additional funding that they secure.
And Aaron, just to be clear, this person is not going to develop the study himself.
They are. They're going to work with the Department of Commerce
Well, that's
planners.
what I'm saying.
Yes.
This is not a one-person show here.
You're right.
You want to, and it's going to involve local stakeholders as well in the
Exactly.
process. So it's not, just to be clear, this is not one person coming out here writing an economic study for the city of Goldsboro.
Correct. We already know that we'll have access to 2 North Carolina Department of Commerce planners that are from our region. They create these plans for other communities across the state, so that's exactly what they would help us do. They've got a process that they would lay out before us and let us know who they would call on to get feedback and information before putting the plan together. So once we decide to move forward, we would set up a call with them and determine what that scope looks like, what the process looks like, and then we would get started.
Do we have to vote on this tonight?
We do, for the fellowship, yes.
Either that or tell them to wait until council feels comfortable, but if I could get a motion second and a vote approval, that would be great. If not, we'll just tell them we're not ready to commit
So they
yet.
needed an answer by Friday?
Yeah, we do. We do have to give them an answer by March 5th about our commitment to the program.
So where does the person come from?
UNC school, a UNC graduate.
Yeah. So they're a recent graduate of the UNC School of Government, or the UNC program. And I think on their fact sheet, they say that all of the participants have been from North Carolina cities, too, which is interesting.
And there's also a matching portion of this where they have an interview with Aaron and such, other people who have been approved. I think there's 50 cities that are totally approved for this.
Yeah, 50 have been approved to move forward, and I mentioned earlier that they've done this program in 28 schools, or in 28 cities, and it sounds like they add on to the fellowship each year as they get more funding. This year they have $480,000 to put towards their subawards to make it more affordable for the communities that they're working in. And it says since their launch, they've had 330 college graduates across the country apply. And all of the Lead for North Carolina fellows were born and raised in North Carolina.
Are we committed for the second year if we?
We're not. No, that would be a choice. That's a great question. So we do know that the subaward for the second year would be exactly half of what we get for the first year. Initially, they thought that we wouldn't get any. The amount does go down in the second year because they don't have the training stipend, which is $13,000. So it's about $33,000 for the fellow in the second year. We would shoulder more of that responsibility in the second year, but they will give us half of our subaward from the first year. So that would really be up to you guys if you wanted to continue and bring them on for a second.
I make a motion that we accept the opportunity to get the fellow to come and work.
I'll second.
Anything else? Anybody else got comments? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Okay. So it was 5-2. You get that, Melissa? What you,
One more time, what did you say?
I said, did you understand me?
No, what, it was it 5-2? Is that what I
5-2,
saw?
that's what I saw.
Okay.
All right? You
Did you vote yes or nay?
you voted for or against it?
Oh, I'm gonna.
6-1.
6 to 1. Thank you.
You voted against it. All right, okay. All right, so just, Althea, we need to switch hers.
I got you.
Thank
All
you.
right? Thank y'all for your help and for your trying.
Thank you. We look forward to reporting back.
All right, we done?
Jennifer for consent agenda?
Huh?
If we can get some of the consent agenda done, Jennifer's ready to move on to that.
What is that?
We have consent agenda items A, B, and C.
You talking about this stuff right here?
Uh-huh.
You know, we can't do that until we're doing the,
We do it during the work session and approve it during the...
huh?
Yeah, I can
Review
just,
it during the work session and then approve it in the regular session.
No, let's just wait and do
You
one.
want to wait?
Yeah, let's do it one time.
Ron has a closed session item for potential litigation that we can do now if council would
You
like
better
so.
come on.
Just need a motion to wait to go in closed session.
So moved.
Melissa, you put us in closed session?
If you give me just a second, what was the motion to go into?
Second and approval.
Hey, we need a second to go into closed session.
Second. We're going to close session.
And
Huh?
approval.
I make second.
She said, what was the motion?
That we go into closed session
For
To
potential
discuss.
litigation.
for
Okay,
potential litigation.
I second.
thank you.
Second.
Can we get a vote to approve?
Can we go ahead and vote now?
Yes.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
Okay, give me just 1 second.
7 o'clock.
Well, I can't do anything till she's ready.
Sorry.
Are you ready, Melissa?
I think so.
Is that a yes?
Uh-huh.
All right. We'll start the March 1st meeting at 7 o'clock. And the first thing we're going to do is get the invocation in here. Pastor Roger Taylor from Philadelphia Church. Is he out there?
Good evening, sir.
Doing excellent, doing excellent. Good, good. Y'all ready? Yep. Let us pray. God in Jesus Christ, we thank and we praise you, God, for your favor you have shown us this night, your grace that's abounding in our lives. Father, in the name of Jesus, I pray, God, that you will lead us and guide us by your Holy Spirit. God bless each and every one here tonight, Father. I pray your Holy Spirit will infuse them with your wisdom, your knowledge, and your understanding. Heavenly Father, you are omniscient, you know all things. And Father, I pray in the name of Jesus that you will have your way this night. God, I pray for each and every one, oh Father, that you will bless them and keep them, that you will make your face shine upon them and be gracious unto them. Father, in the name of Jesus, lift up your countenance upon them and give them peace, shalom, prosperity, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing lacking in their life. Name of Jesus, I pray and I thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And we need to do the Pledge of Allegiance, sir. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next we have roll call.
Mayor Allen,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ham,
Here.
Councilmember Jones,
Here.
Councilmember Broadway.
Here.
Councilmember Polak,
Present.
Councilmember Matthews. Present. Councilmember Akins.
Next we have public comment period. We don't have any.
Yeah, you got a couple out there, Mayor.
What'd he say?
You have a couple people out here. Public comment?
We don't have
okay.
presentation.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
You want me to tell them?
Yeah, come in, can somebody tell him you mind?
No, he's going to.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
How are you?
I'm doing just great. I hope everyone else is fine. I am Sylvia Barnes, and I am the local branch president of the Goldsboro Wayne branch NAACP, and I am here tonight to ask you all for some transportation passes for the people that cannot afford to ride the bus or do not have transportation to get to the COVID locations where they can take the vaccines. If you all remember, some of you all were on the board during that time, I think it was 2018, I came and asked the council to give the NAACP some bus passes for our middle school children to be able to ride to the W.A. Foster Center Seymour Homes, Family Y, and some other locations during this summer. You all gave us some of those, and I had a few of them left. So I talked with Mr. Willis at the GWTA, and he agreed to take the passes that I had left and turn them into one that the people would be able to get and use, and he's willing to let the people ride the buses if they can show one of those. But when I talked with him last week, I realized that they needed actually 4 passes, because they need one to go where the vaccines are being given, one to come back home, then when they have to go back for their second, they need one to go and one to come back. So I'm here tonight to ask you all for some more that we can give to the people that are not able to pay to ride the bus or do not have transportation.
You have any idea how many you need?
Well, I talked with Dr. Stackhouse at the health department, and he told me last week that they have a number of about 7,000 people in the county that have not had the vaccine, that are in the higher risk. I think that's 65 and the older. And he didn't know exactly how many of those. He said that the last count he had was like 7,000 that had not had it. My concern is also that we be able to give some to the younger people as well. So I do not have a number that I can say we need, at this time, I do not have one, but we will
We
accept.
we can find out. We can go ask, just like you can, I guess.
I thought we'd already worked that out. Hadn't we worked that out, Gene?
As far as I know,
I thought that was taken care of.
He told me last week when I met with him last Thursday and Friday, he took the passes that I had, which was 102, left from the school program, and he was turning them into, but even if we would use, even when he give me those 102 back, that would only be 51 people that I can give those to.
I'll make sure we get you an update on that, ma'am, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And I'll make sure council understands, but I think as Mr. Aycock said, who's a member of the board, that they were going to find a way to get people who needed their shots without...
I was able to meet with him last Thursday because I was in here.
Mm-hmm. Well, my councilman is Councilman Bill Broadway, and he and I had talked several times, and he was also speaking with them, trying to get something also. But when I called Mr. Willis back last week and told him, about instead of giving them 2 passes, well, I thought we were going to be able to give 1 pass, and they take that pass and show it whenever they got on the bus. But because of what his drivers have to do is have some control over people that get on the bus. He wants them to have one each time. So I would thank you very much for whatever you all can do to help us. And the area that I am really concerned with and talking with the people over there is the area down on South Slocum Street and over on Jefferson Court.
Ms. Barnes, before you
Yes,
leave,
sir.
And I don't know where housing authority plays into this, and I know everybody that has limitations of transportation is not in housing. But at one point, I think it would be an asset for us to coordinate with housing, because if we set up, and every housing authority has an office space, if we coordinate where maybe the people administering the shops can go there, in some of these cases where we may not be able to cover transportation, if they can have an on-site, because I took mine today at Busman. Of course, I have transportation, but we have I know East Coast Regional Housing Authority with Seymour, they have a site. The Day at the Grand has a site. Jefferson Court, I don't think is the only one. Maybe the Boys Club, maybe.
They have a site. They don't, I won't say they have a site.
I mean, an office space.
There is the office where the people can go.
Okay.
And pay their rent. But when I talked with some people at the health department,
Yes,
they
ma'am.
told me that what had been worked out for the GWTA, and that was also one of the things that Mr. Willis and I talked about, that was strictly for the people that live in the Goldsboro housing. It did not include Seymour Homes. It did not include, well, I still call it
Courtyard.
courtyard,
Right.
but that's not the
That's not.
official name.
That's right, that's right.
I'll try to call Mr. Willis tomorrow and clarify things.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
We'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your trying. We have anybody else?
There's two more out there.
Two more. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, council members.
Good evening.
The concern I have is taxation without consideration. The article in the newspaper last week about the water hike again, raising the water up. Now, it was raised in July.
We can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes,
I didn't know
thank
if I
you.
was, thank you, excuse me. My concern is taxation without consideration. You raised the water hike, the water bills last year, 2020 at 17.5%. Now, according to the news August, you're gonna raise it again, and by 2023, it's gonna be over $100 a month. That's a lot. Our people that live in the city, we pay city and county tax. We're overtaxed and underpaid. And look at our streets. Our streets are bumpy and messed up, and every time it rains, they flood. We pay a stormwater fee, drain's supposed to be cleaned out. We shouldn't have this, but some of the streets are still flooded. So please consider this, and the people, look at all the things that have happened to many people. The pandemic has taken many jobs. It has reduced the people that work, and they have reduced their hours. So they're getting less money. So nothing from nothing gets nothing. So why should we be so overtaxed we can't even pay our bills? I make sure I work, and I'm 75, and I'm glad of it, and I want to work as long as I can. But I think of people that, look at the people who don't have jobs, and they trying to live and raise their families and just be citizens. And so please help us, please reconsider this, not to raise it again. And look at our streets. It's like riding over a rocky road. It's so many potholes, and that's wear and tear on your car, and tires. Tires are expensive. Nobody, and I'm sure you all not gonna pay for people's tires. Please fix the roads. I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I understand where you're coming from.
We hear you.
My name is Paul Sailors. I'm a local history librarian at the Wayne County Public Library. I'm also representative of the board of DGDC and its ad hoc committee. I'm here this evening to simply inform the Goldsboro City Council of our mounting research and interest in the historic Black Business District of Goldsboro and the historically Black neighborhoods of our city. Black business districts appeared in North Carolina and other southern states after the public segregation of the races became legal in the 1890s. New laws forced many businesses either to provide separate facilities for Black customers or to deny service to African American patrons altogether. Black entrepreneurs stepped in to establish operations in which African Americans could be served with courtesy and dignity. Residential segregation in many cities restricted most of these businesses to African American sections of these towns and cities. This led to the beginning of Black business districts across the New South. Black businesses thrived in Goldsboro, specifically the outskirts of the city boundary. Webtown, Little Washington, James City, Greenleaf, those are some neighborhoods I'm referring to. My research specifically is focused on the Black business district that ran along South James Street between West Spruce and Elm Streets. There were fish markets, pool halls, restaurants, theaters, attorneys' offices, insurance companies, barber shops, the list goes on and on. I'm here this evening just to invite people of Goldsboro of all races, creeds, and colors to share their stories and photographs, memories with us at the library and with DGDC. Can never get that right. It's important to have available the entire local history of Goldsboro, North Carolina, and I can be reached at the Wayne County Public Library and the local history room.
I'd like to thank you very much, sir. I am on the board and I know everything that you guys are doing, and I am very, very happy. My aunt had a fish market on Olivia Lane. It was Dean's Fish Market.
You know, I'm one of the few in here who's old enough to remember all the businesses on South James Street. The Green Parrot Cafe, I think the Roxy Theater, wasn't that what it was called?
The pictures I've seen is James Street Theater, but they couldn't. I've just started my research.
I know there was a cab stand there, and
yes,
you know, it was, boy, on Saturday it was a jumping place. They had a lot of business. I hate to see it all gone.
Sir, thank you.
One thing before you leave, it's kind of coincidence you mentioned that. I was looking in the picture in the city manager, mayor's office. I was going to call Georgia Dees to ask about, because I saw the icon with the downtown development group down at the bottom, but the Dora Stevens Westmoreland House at the corner of William and Elm, which was one of the first Black schoolhouses built in 1878. If there's any way you could research some of that, because I was actually about to send her the picture to ask, because she was in the picture, because I saw they renovated, fixed the roof, but the building itself is kind of deteriorating, and I saw it had the downtown Goldsboro Development Group icon at the bottom. So I was just trying to follow up to see what they were doing as far as that project.
I'm not sure exactly, but I've come across a very good newspaper article about that building.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Is that house on the left?
The corner, it's a green house on the corner of William and
I've
Elm.
always heard that was a
It
school.
was a school, it was, one of the first Black schools.
One more?
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. I'm Thomas Rice, and I'm with MLFL, and I come here today to come back before this council and everything to get this stuff for this non-congregated shelter start. On Monday, February the 15th, I met with Assistant City Manager, Mr. Solomon, and the City Attorney, Mr. Lawrence. The First of all, I would like to thank for the meeting and everything, and I appreciate it. But I want to say that, we, as I said, all of us, we got a small problem, but some of us, it's obvious they look at it, it's not a problem. It's more of a nuisance, and that's not so. In the meeting, you asked me a couple of questions, Mr. Saltman, as to what the city could do for me or how could the city help me. When you asked me that, my mind went to turning, because I was thinking and I thought about it's something that Dr. King said, that, and I realized that it's somewhat of an instance, we're living in the same thing, where we're living in a time where the poor black and white people, it's like we are perishing in this thing of poverty, and it's more, people look at more materialistic things than they do of trying to help the human soul, one of God's creatures. I'd say it's time that we start living up to our expectations of the founding principles of our country, which is embedded in the Declaration of Independence, where it is said that we hold it, that the truth be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that are by their endowed and created with certain inevitable rights, and those rights are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, here, the homeless person has been being left out of that right. And by law, federal law and everything, we can't take their right away from them. They have a right to the same treatment that we receive, and they should get that. Referring to a question that a statement that Mr. Lawrence stated to me about the city has ordinances, and I have been around, and if y'all got the little packet I sent you today, I've been around and I have taken pictures in the parks of the signs and stuff where it says they close at certain times, this and that and the other. But referring back to the case of the Ninth Circuit Court, federal court, which the Supreme Court has upheld, in the case of Martin versus Boise, it said that a city governments may not enforce ordinances that ban public camping unless you first provide enough shelter beds to house every person in your jurisdiction. So anybody that has been charged, and I have talked to several of them, they've been charged with trespassing, vagrancy, loitering, that is against the Eighth Amendment. That's cruel and unusual punishment. So, I come here to y'all today, and as you know, I've been to you before, and I'm not asking you to do anything that's out of the ordinary. I'm asking you to do something that will help enhance the city as far as building up the community, building up the people of the community, and helping us to get back on one accord. Now, the little tricky thing about it is that if we have this ordinance, then you can enforce these laws. If you have shelter for it, you can enforce these laws. But so what I'm saying is, to try to end this and make it short, is I want the city of Goldsboro, this is what you can do for me, to sign this memorandum of understanding. Mayor Allen, let me get that letter of verification so I can get the federal surplus to work with us, and let's get this thing going so we can put these people in some kind of shelter, safekeeping. I mean, because it's something that's needed, and it's something that they have a right to. They have a right to health and safety. So I will end my conversation here on that, and I will say this much. I will looking forward to somebody contacting me as to when we can meet and try to get this together. And most thing I do is, this lady, they always tutored me and she have taught me a lot. She always told me to stand on my truth. So I'm standing on my truth. This is the truth. I'm not gonna back off of it. I'm not gonna go away from it. Because we all have to abide by the law. And that's what it is. So that's what I'm here for. Thank you for your time, and I look to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. I am concerned with the financial health of our city, and I'm not the only one. Dan Fowle, NC State Treasurer, states the city of Goldsboro is on the state's watch list. He also states when you are on this list, the scrutiny about a city's borrowing money increases. Fowle said we as citizens should hold the city council accountable and demand answers. He also states we deserve the highest level of transparency, competency, and when it comes to the tax money that we send in. Sharon Edmondson, Deputy Treasurer, also said the late audit reflects on city leadership. She goes on to say the serious matter is a reflection on the quality of both governing board, oversight, and management practices in the city. We are currently paying double what an audit would normally cost the city. We have lost our Moody's rating, and this makes the statement that we are not a good financial risk. NC Housing Finance Agency, Michael Hanley, said the only way that he could get our attention was to turn the spigot off on us. In other words, they froze our funds to get our attention, funds that so many in our community desperately need. This results in us now becoming less competitive for grants and could take a while to build ourselves back up. So we have a state treasurer, we have a state housing finance agency, we've had the Attorney General's office talk to us about our poor practices with public records. We have the School of Government who says that municipalities should change their auditors every 5 years, and we've had our previous auditors 20 plus years. Does this council feel these agencies are divisive? Because I myself have asked some of the same questions, and I am being labeled disruptive and divisive when I come here to ask you guys some of these questions. Is there a double standard? I'm also here tonight to advocate for the 21 individuals on the petition that exercise their right as citizens to support me for the District 1 vacant council seat. These individuals have had their names and addresses spewed all over social media without their consent, regards for their safety or privacy. According to the School of Government, this council could have had an election for this seat, yet they chose, and you all were in your right, to appoint. And I respect that, and congratulations, Ms. Jones, on your appointment. My concern is the unfair treatment I am receiving and those 21 individuals on the petition, and some even seated here at the council table, because you all chose to support me. I believe the tone for this behavior was set by certain members of this council when the false allegation was lodged against me, which was done by Mr. Ham. Again, I would like to state everyone on the petition is legitimate and they did nothing wrong. As a citizen of District 1, I hope my newly elected council member, Ms. Jones, will stand in solidarity with me, the District 1 citizens, and all the citizens who participated in supporting the candidates of their choice, and we must condemn the behaviors of Councilman Ham's false allegations against me, Kenneth Fine of the New Old North, who actually plastered all these people's addresses on social media, Mark Metzler of Landscape and Design and Team Goldsboro, who added to the fuel of furthering putting these people's addresses out there. It's not fair. Now, when I did come for that interview, Mr. Broadway, you were true to your word. You asked me the same question you asked Ms. Jones, and that was, would you put the people ahead of personal friendships or the right thing to do? And I'm asking you, this council, that same question. And especially, Ms. Jones, to you, will you stand and condemn these behaviors because they do nothing to help our community? Again, if you want it to right, you have the right to choose, but to put people's information, how would you guys feel if I took all of your supporters or everyone in this council seat and put your information out for the world to see without your consent? I don't think you would agree with it. So, we have to do better. I looked at the retreat, and you're talking about finances, and, it's not a jovial thing. We should all be questioning how we are going to move the city forward. Any questions? Mr. Ham, would you like to say anything to me? And that's part of the problem. It's sad. You were wrong with what you did. And I gave you the opportunity to be man enough to correct your wrongs. And that behavior you have displayed for years, that's what's wrong with the council, is that behavior. You should really look at yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Is there anybody else up there?
Hey, Commissioner.
Good evening, council members. Good to see you all today. Good evening. Congratulations, Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Very welcome. I'm here today because I want to clear up a couple of things. First, I saw we had Ms. Barnes, and she was concerned about the GWTA and getting buses to individuals who needed COVID shots. Well, because of the county commissioners, we're not able to have a lot of staff all over the place, so we're just going to be doing everything at the busman building as of now. So, Gene, if you do get buses that need to travel, they can bring them to the busman building, opposed to different locations. And
I'm gonna work on that.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And also, there was some issues pertaining to the petition that was submitted to this council. Well, I checked thoroughly the names, and all those names were legitimate people on that petition. And I noticed that a local blogger posted all of the citizens' names, and I know that has nothing to do with you gentlemen, but I think it was totally wrong that they would put citizens' address, publicly out there. They've been calling me, they're from District 1, and they've been calling me, and, they're very disappointed that occurred, so that's for that individual. But it's good to see everyone here. Hopefully, we can get some things done. Ms. Jones, we're depending on you to work together, okay? Thank you.
I plan to do that.
Thank you.
I plan to work with
All
my
right.
district.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And I will get with Don tomorrow, because it's my understanding we were going to provide them for free with no problems. But I'll find out what the procedure is.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do what?
It's you.
That's it?
You're up, Jennifer.
Item A on the consent agenda is CU 121 Anthony Mathis. The property is located on the north side of East US 70 Highway between Miller's Chapel Road and Carriage Road. The applicant's requesting a conditional use permit for the installation of a prefabricated accessory structure used for the operation and expansion of an existing automotive service center located in the Airport Business Zoning District. Services include automobile window tinting, automobile inspections, and tire sales. The property is located in the overlay APZ 1 noise contour of 7580 DNL and 80 and 85 DNL. In June of 2009, City Council approved a conditional use permit as well as site and landscape plans to allow an automobile window tinting operation upon the subject property. A modification of the protected street yard with width from 8 feet to 2.5 feet was also approved. As a condition of the permit issuance, City Council required the extension of a vehicular surface buffer across the easternmost driveway, which was required to be closed by NCDOT, limiting access to the property from 2 driveways to 1 along East US 70 Highway. The submitted...
Did they close that or they did?
They did. The submitted site plan indicates 2 existing buildings totaling approximately 1,500 square feet and an additional 930 square foot prefabricated and enclosed metal building is proposed that will serve as an additional service bay for automobile window tinting. There's 2 employees and the hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. As indicated, the subject property falls within the Seymour Johnson Air Force Base Accident Potential Zone and 75, 80, 80, and 84 day-night average sound level, which is DNL, noise zones. Base officials have been contacted and recommended that noise attenuation measures be incorporated into the design and construction of any new structure where the public is received. City water and sewer are available to serve the property, and the property is not located in a special flood hazard area. Parking standards are based on 1 space per working bay plus 1 employee, and a total of 16 spaces are required and have been provided. At the public hearing held on February the 15th, the applicant came forward to speak in favor of the request, and no one appeared to speak against. The Planning Commission at their meeting held on February the 22nd recommended approval of the conditional use permit for the installation of a prefabricated accessory structure used for the operation and expansion of the existing automotive service center located in the Airport Business Zoning District. It is recommended by motion accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission and adopt an order approving the conditional use permit. Any questions?
Anybody got any questions? Anybody got any comments?
Okay, item B on the consent agenda is S221, and it's Frankie Mazingo, It's a 2-lot preliminary subdivision plat. The property is located on the north side of East Ash Street between North Oak Forest Road and Piedmont Airline Road. The total area is roughly 7 acres with 2 lots. The new lot of number 1, or the lot 1 area, is roughly 1.02 acres, with the remaining tract identified as lot 2 is 6.03 acres. The zoning is R16 residential manufactured non-conforming. The subject property has been proposed for division into 2 lots for the purpose of residential development. If approved, the applicant intends to set up a modular home on one of the 2 lots, meeting the requirements of the North Carolina State Building Code. According to the city's Unified Development Ordinance, the applicant is required to follow the city's major subdivision approval process since the entire tract to be subdivided exceeds 3 acres. The proposed preliminary plat shows lots 1 and 2 are located in the R16 zoning district. Lot 2 is occupied by an existing single-family dwelling, and building setbacks for single-family dwellings within the R16 are lot width 100 feet, front setback 45, rear setback 25 feet, side setback 16, and then a side corner lot is 32 feet. Currently, the existing tract proposed for subdivision has no road frontage and is accessed by an existing 20-foot wide easement off of East Ash Street. According to the city's UDO, all lots shall have a frontage along an improved public or private street of no less than 50 feet. The applicant has received a variance for this requirement from the Goldsboro Board of Adjustment and has agreed to increase the existing access easement from 20 feet to 30 feet in accordance with city regulations. City water and sewer are available to serve the property, and since the property is located within 1,000 feet of city water and sewer, the applicant is required to annex Lot 1 into the city limits of Goldsboro. The proposed subdivision is not located within a special flood hazard area. The subject property is located within Seymour Johnson's 6569 noise overlay zone. Base officials have been contacted and require that noise attenuation measures be incorporated into the construction of the new home to achieve an outdoor to indoor noise level reduction of at least 25 decibels. The Planning Commission at their meeting held on February the 22nd recommended approval of the preliminary subdivision plan with the requirements set forth by Seymour Johnson Air Force Base and the submission of an annexation petition. It is recommended by motion, accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve the preliminary two-lot subdivision plat with stipulations as presented. Any questions? Thank you.
So basically what we got there is we got a consent agenda with 3 items on it, and we've not approved any of them.
No, sir. You'll have the third one, I believe, presented, and then you'll take action on the consent agenda afterwards.
All right. So we're going to wait and do them all at one time? Is that
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
The third item you have for the consent agenda tonight is the memorandum of understanding we have with the county. We discussed this in closed session, and we have the amendment that was proposed. We discussed the amendment itself. That amendment was presented to the county. The county commissioners approved that amendment and authorized the chairman of the board to execute that contract for that amendment to the agreement. And just review those in general. You have the resolution in front of you provided in the agenda packet. You also have the agenda memorandum that explained it. We went over that contract. But essentially what happened was we were marketing or allowed the county to market 2.5 acres. It was determined that they needed about 2.65 acres to actually market for the potential hotel. So they had increased it by 0.15 acres that they needed. The city also owes the county $138,000 for the retaining pond. There's been discussion about reducing that amount. And as you recall, the proposed agreement and the proposed agreement change was that the city was going to allow the county to now market 2.65 acres. That leaves the city with 3.35 acres as opposed to 3.5 to market for restaurants. That's going to be in front of the property. The hotel's going to be positioned in such a way so that it's not going to interfere with the line of sight of the Maxwell Center, and that they're trying to position it so the marketability of the property to allow 2 restaurants is being maximized for the 3.35 acres that's going to remain. As a result of those conversations, the county has agreed, and they had presented the proposal to reduce the $138,000 debt to an amount, but not to reduce it any more than $60,500. That was discussed in closed session, and then by discussion, it was approved to be presented to the county. They had presented that to us, and so at this point in time, the actual resolution, which will allow the mayor to execute this amendment to the prior agreement, is before you for approval. If there's any questions about the agenda item or the resolution presented, just let me know. I'll try to explain a little bit more. I hope you had an opportunity to review that in your agenda packet before today. And it is exactly as I presented to you in closed session as far as the amendments that were made. They're exactly the same. And again, I don't know if I said this, but the chairman for the Wayne County Board of Commissioners has already executed the agreement on their behalf for the amendment. All right, well, if there's no questions, then that would be the last item for the consent agenda.
That's what we agreed.
Yeah, anybody got any questions? All right. All right, so then that's be the last item on our consent agenda for approval?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
So consent agenda items A through C are presented for council approval.
I make a motion that we accept items A through C on the consent agenda.
You said yes?
I said I make a motion.
Okay.
No second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes or raise your right hand.
Roll call.
Huh?
Roll call. She's gonna do the roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Mayor Allen,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem Ham,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones, Councilmember Broadway,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Polat.
Yes.
Councilmember Matthews,
Yes.
Councilmember Aycock.
Yes.
All right, so looks like that passed. And then, the next thing, we're gonna individual items requiring individual action. There are none. City Manager's report, do we have anything there?
Yes, sir, if I could, I think we are being transparent with the status of our audit. I will ask our auditors for an update at the next council meeting. I'd also like to highlight that the North Carolina Governor Executive Order 195 is the latest, which lifts the modified stay-at-home order and eases certain restrictions on business and gatherings. That started last Friday. Some of the most significant pieces of that are indoor mass gathering limits go from 25 to 50. Outdoors remain at 50. On-site consumption of alcohol is now allowed from 11 p.m. Up to 11 p.m. and then closed till 7 a.m. Fitness facilities have a limit of 50% capacity, and your entertainment facilities 30% capacity. So that can be found on our home website. That's all I have, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Next, we have mayor and council member reports. What?
You always start with me. Let me
Oh, you
be the
don't have
last
me in
once in a
first?
while.
You
Yeah.
have a proclamation that's before
Yeah,
you.
we got a proclamation.
Yeah, he's got it. All right. You ready to do that? Yeah.
Okay. Developmental Disability Awareness Month proclamation. Whereas a development disability is a diverse group of chronic conditions that are due to mental or physical impairments that arise before adulthood, and whereas the condition is likely to continue indefinitely and limits the individual in 3 or more of the following areas: self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, capacity for independent living, and economic self-sufficiency. And whereas the condition creates the individual's need for a combination of special interdisciplinary services, individualized, person-centered supports, and other forms of long-term assistance that are individually planned and coordinated. And whereas the disability experience is a natural part of life and is valued as a part of our rich diversity. And whereas disability is a social construct, the problem is not the medical condition that resides within the individual, but the problem is that society does not create welcoming, supporting, and inclusive environments, policies, or systems for all to promote equality and acceptance in all areas of life, including schools, places of employment, and in our communities. And whereas the most effective way to increase awareness is through everyone's openness to learn and acknowledge that there are systemic barriers that reduce the likelihood of those with disabilities enjoying equitable experiences and living independence, productive lives within their communities. And whereas policies must be developed, attitudes shaped, and equitable experiences be offered to all individuals, including those with developmental disabilities. And whereas citizens should do all in their power to recognize the value of the disability experience in our lives and the valued role it has in our rich diversity. Recognize the barriers presented to those with disabilities across all aspects of their lives. Create ways to include everyone, especially those with developmental disabilities, to be fully included in all aspects of life. Understand the losses, financial, spiritual, human rights, contributions to community, and otherwise, when our communities segregate and create barriers for those with disabilities. Demand policymakers no longer invest in segregation and creative, inclusive, equitable policies and systems for all. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Allen, Mayor of the City of Goldsboro, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, and galvanize efforts that will lead our communities and policymakers to create real system changes so people with developmental disabilities will enjoy equitable, inclusive lives. In witness wherefore I happen to set my hand and fix the seal of the city of Goldsboro, North Carolina, this first day of March 2021.
All right, thank you, sir. Closed session we've already done. So, we have anything else to do?
Council comments. Comments.
Okay. Gene,
Go start this way.
you want to go? You want somebody else?
I'll go. Well, what I want to say is that this past Saturday, I walked down to Herman Park, and the park was full of people enjoying one of the best days that we've had this year. And as I walked through there, I saw a diverse group of people, age-wise, race-wise, and otherwise, commuting, talking with each other, sharing tables where they were eating together, and so forth. I stopped at one of the benches there around the fountain and talked with a retired Gulf War veteran, and he was a grandparent, he and his wife and their grandchild. And they were just having a day with their grandchild, enjoying themselves, resting. I continued my walk on through the park and down outside and came back eventually and walked along the tennis courts. And at the westmost end of the tennis courts, there was a lady sitting there, and I stopped to talk to her. This lady was from New York, originally moved to South Florida, then back to Raleigh-Durham, and to escape the hassle of living in the cosmopolitan area of that, she had a property in Kinston, and she moved to Kinston, where she is currently living. Has been there about 3 or 4 weeks. But why was she in Goldsboro? She had heard about Goldsboro. She wanted to come over here and drive down Center Street and see what she had heard so much about. And she ended up at the park where she walked 2.5 miles. She had just completed a 2.5 mile walk. And there were a couple other people that I've encountered. What I'm saying, folks, is that, you know, and by the way, let me just say for a matter of fact, these two people that I sat and talked with, and I sat down with this lady, by the way, they were not white people. I didn't choose to serve with white. They were black people. I had a great conversation with them. I learned about them. I shared experiences with them. And this diversity and this interaction was throughout the park that day. Goldsboro is a great place to live. We have great people here. We have an attitude amongst our people that we really want to get along well together. We want to share experiences. We want to develop together. And so I would say to people that look and say, well, we've got major problems here. We need to get out of here. No. Go out there and look and spend a few minutes walking around and talking to people. You really get an appreciation of what we have here in Goldsboro.
I would like to say that I'm honored to represent the citizens of District 1 in my city. And may I ask that we spend our energy on encouraging and developing our children and youth during this time, because our children really need us and they're hurting. I would also ask that we spend our energy on encouraging and ensuring the elderly and the senior citizens that they are safe and that they are not left behind. I would ask that we spend our energy on growing our community and placing Goldsboro back on the map as a great place to like, to live, and to visit. I remember a couple of years back when Goldsboro was on the first list of 10, and I want us back there. Thank you.
Thank you.
No comment, sir.
Tosh?
Yes, sir. I just want to recognize the events that were hosted downtown during Black History Month. Not limiting the cultural awareness to downtown during this month, but I wanted to highlight the Arts Council, which showcased the talents of Mr. Max Mazingo with the community mural, as well as the amazing exhibits which are housed at the Wayne County Museum. I was fortunate to see the contributions of two of my fellow council members, Councilman Matthews at the Arts Community Mural Painting, as well as Councilmember Jones in her reenactment representing the widows and beneficiaries of the United States Colored Troops of the 135th Regiment. By the way, this presentation can be viewed on the Wayne County Museum website, and it will be up through May. I also want to pray for those that have taken their first vaccine, as well as those that are awaiting their second. I was apprehensive initially about this, but I got my first one today. So pray for me as well. I also want to let Councilmember Jones know, welcome to the board, and we border districts, and any way I can be of any assistance to you, I'm a phone call away. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
No comment.
No comment.
Thank you.
2 weeks ago, I was admonished for a vote that I made. And, you know, every member of this council has one vote. And we vote it the way we feel we need to vote it. And to have somebody be disrespectful to me for the way I voted, I do not appreciate. And I have never been disrespectful to them.
Okay. Well, maybe they can hear you. Anything else? All right, well, if not, we thank everybody for coming, and we stand adjourned.